I am Hector, a 47-year-old Puerto Rican male. My former spouse was my wife, Debbie, and I were married for 26 years, but we were together for a total of 30 years. We married during our senior year of high school because she became pregnant with our first child at that time. I was fortunate enough to secure employment at UPS shortly after graduation. However, our relationship initially faced challenges due to her family's traditional Irish values, which initially made it difficult for them to accept me. However, with time, I was able to gain their trust and respect, particularly that of her father. I was able to provide for our family, thus relieving her of the necessity to work. By the time we reached the age of 27, we had already had 5 children, 4 girls and a boy. One might say that I was fortunate to have a boy first, as this afforded me the opportunity to experience a different parenting approach. I expressed my desire for more emotional closeness, and there were certainly occasions when we had our fair share of arguments over money and differing parenting styles. However, I understood that with 5 children, things could be overwhelming, and I did my best to be of assistance. Despite my efforts, my ex-wife was still exhausted. My wife Debbie was a significant figure in my life. She consistently prioritized her physical well-being, maintaining a fit and healthy body. I endeavor to adopt a similar approach, yet the prolonged nature of my employment as a delivery driver has left me with a physique that is somewhat lacking in muscle definition. My chest, arms and legs possess some degree of muscularity, yet my abdomen is notably flabby, and my receding hairline has prompted me to shave it all off. Despite these challenges, Debbie was my rock. There were instances when she would verbally lash out at me, yet I remained committed to our relationship. She would verbally attack me, and, whenever I stood up for myself and fought back, she would turn into a crying bully. This behavior wore me down over the years. Eventually, we became the only married couple left in our circle of friends. Of the 7 married couples we knew, 5 divorces were caused by the wives cheating, 1 was due to the husband's infidelity, and the last one happened because the wife was friends with someone of the opposite sex. My wife was spending an increasing amount of time with her newly single friends, which I found uncomfortable. However, whenever I raised the issue, we would argue about my controlling behavior, my wife feeling imprisoned and treated like an object. These arguments were particularly surprising given the length of time she spent with her friends. As her friends became more frequent, her resentment grew. The children also noticed this. I recall my son and 2 of my daughters arguing with her when I got home. I understood their frustration, but I scolded them for yelling at their mother when they left the room. I then asked her about the issue, and she informed me that they see her as a servant. I inquired as to the source of her resentment, but she dismissed the matter, becoming increasingly withdrawn. The incident in question occurred on the day of the revelation, which has remained vivid in my memory. Debbie was out with her friends, and I was in the kitchen preparing meals while the children were watching a train to Busan. Suddenly, my 3 eldest children entered the kitchen. With expressions of concern, before I could even inquire as to the nature of their suspicions, my son informed me that they believed their mother to be engaged in an extramarital affair. I was initially incredulous and reluctant to accept this hypothesis. I verbally reprimanded them, assuring them that their assumption was erroneous. However, I subsequently decided to utilize the Find My iPhone application, which led me to discover. I promptly drove to the bar on the outskirts of town. Upon arrival, I observed a large crowd of individuals, many of whom appeared to be inebriated. I proceeded to locate my wife's group of friends, who were situated in a corner booth. As I approached, their demeanor suddenly changed, and I sensed a growing unease. I did not observe her inside the establishment. Instead, I proceeded to exit the premises and traverse the parking area in the far corner. There, I observed a vehicle with a male driver who appeared to be asleep. This individual was someone I had previously considered a friend. I approached the vehicle to inquire if he had seen my wife. However, as I drew nearer, it became evident that he was engaged in a conversation. As I drew nearer, I became increasingly aware of the woman in the vehicle. I was standing mere inches from the driver's side window, yet none of them were aware of my presence. I was overcome with rage and, without a second thought, shattered the window and pulled the man out. My actions were not those of a civilized person. Debbie was screaming apologies repeatedly while I was shouting at her. I proceeded to kick him. The police arrived shortly thereafter, and I was taken into custody on charges of assault and battery. I was incarcerated for approximately 10 days at the county jail. I was transported to the infirmary due to concerns that I was experiencing a myocardial infarction, but the medical evaluation revealed that I was suffering from broken heart syndrome. The news of my actions rapidly disseminated, ultimately reaching my father. In conclusion, my father-in-law bailed me out of jail. He was visibly distressed when I was released from custody and informed me that he had been in contact with my manager and union representative to discuss the incident and that he wanted me to keep my job. He also told me that the children had been staying with him and that Debbie was waiting for me at home. He appeared to be aware of what was going to happen. This is why he brought the truck. It transpired that he was rigged when we arrived at the house. Debbie ran up to me in tears, attempting to hug me. I pushed her away so forcefully that she fell to the ground. She looked at me in shock. I informed her that I wanted a divorce and instructed her to gather her belongings and leave my house. She attempted to resist, but her father convinced her otherwise. This occurred approximately an hour after they left. My mother, my in-law, arrived with the children, and I embraced them warmly. She also expressed remorse for her daughter's actions before departing. In my state, there is a mandatory requirement for couples counseling before granting a divorce. I find this requirement perplexing, as I do not see how counseling can rectify the situation. During the sessions, I observed my spouse engaging in blame shifting and attempting to shift responsibility for her actions onto me and our young parenthood. She also expressed a desire for a wild lifestyle. She contacted freedom and her friends encouraged her to do so. Eventually, she felt like she was missing something and initiated a sexual relationship with another man. The counselor attempted on several occasions to attribute blame to me, stating that I should have allowed her to explore and understand her perspective. I simply looked at the counselor and inquired as to whether she was smoking because that was the most absurd thing she could say. I asked Debbie how long she had been unfaithful to me with this other man, and she admitted that it had been going on for 4 months. She stated that he was the only one and that it was a mistake that we could move past because of our history together. My anger prompted me to inquire further with probing questions. I wanted to ascertain who initiated the closeness, whether it was her or him, and how many times she performed oral sex on him. I also wanted to know if she swallowed, if they had unprotected sex, if he ejaculated inside her, and if they ever fell asleep together. As she responded, she shed tears. I experienced a prolonged period of silence. The counselor attempted to engage in conversation on 2 occasions, but I indicated that I did not wish to respond by raising my finger to silence her. I reflected on the moments we shared before and during her infidelity, including instances of laughter, dialogue, and intimacy. There was no indication of distress or anger on her part. I simply allowed myself to be myself. When I was able to speak again, I brought up the times we were close during that period. I referred to her as a 403, disregarding the counselor's attempt to correct me, and continued to hurl every insult in the book at her. Eventually, I informed her that she was tainted in my eyes. The counselor and Debbie attempted to persuade me that our shared history and relationship could be salvaged despite this misstep. However, I was uninterested in their perspective. It seemed as though they were more concerned with facilitating forgiveness and enabling my own reconciliation with her than considering my feelings on the matter. I made her feel like a servant, so I made the decision to walk out. This contested divorce has been a tough and ongoing battle for the past 2 years. Despite this, Debbie is still attempting to reconcile and get us back together. However, I am unsure why our conversations are strictly focused on the children. If she tries to talk about something else, I end the call. When it comes to family gatherings, I either avoid her or do not show up. Our eldest children have chosen not to communicate with her. Initially, I tried to encourage them to spend time with their mother. However, I now respect their decision. My house is visited on a regular basis by the relevant authorities, who have been attempting to persuade their daughter to finalize the divorce. However, this has not been successful. My mother-in-law has been particularly harsh in her treatment of her, calling her names and spreading gossip about her within their congregation. I was obliged to request that she cease this behavior, as I was concerned that our personal matters might become public knowledge throughout the town. During the first year of my son and daughter setting up a Tinder account for me, I initially considered this to be an unwise decision. After all, I am a middle-aged man with 5 children and a somewhat overweight physique. The individual in question is an older man with 5 children and a physique that is commonly referred to as a dad bod. However, he has been on more than a dozen highly successful dates through the app, which has significantly enhanced his self-confidence in recent times. He met someone while doing community service for a court-related issue. Her name is Isabel, and she was the supervisor for our Habitat for Humanity project. Let me tell you, she is absolutely stunning. In fact, she even won first place in a Vanessa Marquez lookalike contest. The contest was held at a soap opera convention, which she attended with her daughter. This is how we began to converse. My daughters are enthusiastic admirers of General Hospital, so I frequently join them to watch it. It is one of the few occasions when I am able to spend quality time with them. Approximately 6 months ago, I introduced Isabel to my children, and they immediately formed a bond. However, when my son and her daughter began to show a mutual attraction, the situation became somewhat awkward. My ex-wife is reluctant to accept the dissolution of our marriage. She has been encouraging our youngest 2 children to believe that we will eventually reconcile, despite my objections. Furthermore, her father is attempting to persuade her to seek therapy, but I am disinclined to pursue this course of action. I am eager for this divorce process to conclude. I do not dwell on the past. With a sense of regret, I reflect on the years I spent with Debbie. We had 5 children together, and I endeavored to build a life for our family. However, I am disheartened by the fact that she chose to end our 26 years together in pursuit of a brief fling. It is disappointing that she believed I would simply overlook this and accept her back into my life without consequence. I must admit that I no longer have any feelings of affection for her. Whenever I encounter her former acquaintances in the vicinity, I am quick to denounce them as 403s and home wreckers rather than using their names. The love and respect I once had for her vanished when I discovered her infidelity. She will always be the mother of my children, that is all. I hope she can accept that reality. I hope this is where I can provide updates. I apologize if this is not the case, and I am sorry if I sound a bit scattered. I am exhausted, having been sitting in the hospital for some time now, sipping on my 3rd can of Bang energy drink, waiting for my ex-wife. My future wife was transferred to a mental hospital. My daughters are back home. Isabel is sleeping beside me and has not left my side. My son has been with his mother since she left surgery. His girlfriend, who is Isabel's daughter, has been there too. The situation began last weekend and has been a nightmare ever since. During the week before my ex, the wife's behavior had been becoming increasingly erratic, with instances of physical altercations with acquaintances. One of these resulted in a broken nose, another in a busted lip, and the final incident involved being shoved out of a Circle K convenience store. Each time the police were called, but as the county is relatively small, they simply took her back to her parents' house. I attempted to persuade my in-laws that she needed to be taken to a hospital for an evaluation, but this led to a heated argument. Ultimately, I relented and agreed to take her to the hospital. On Saturday, we all attended my in-laws' house. On the occasion of the anniversary of the passing of the relevant legislation, Debbie appeared to be in a state of distress. I approached her and initiated a conversation, which was the first time we had engaged in such a discussion. I inquired as to her well-being, and although she attempted to feign a smile and assure me that she was fine, I was able to discern that she was in fact crying. She expressed her regret and inability to comprehend why she had not confronted her former acquaintances or resisted their influence. She acknowledged that she had caused significant damage to our family and that seeing how happy I was with Isabel had made her realize the extent of her loss. At this point, a sense of fear or anxiety overwhelmed me. I continued to inquire as to her well-being, but I was taken aback when Debbie formally apologized to Isabel for her actions and requested that she make me happy, as I deserved a good woman during the party. Debbie approached each of our children and I could see them reconciling with her. The exact content of the conversation is unclear, but it is evident that they embraced and expressed affection towards each other. They were engaged in conversation and laughter, and even posed for a few photographs. Isabel and I were enjoying ourselves immensely, and for the first time, I entertained the idea of engaging in civil discourse with Debbie. The call from my sister-in-law came at 3 in the morning. My mother-in-law was screaming in a state of panic. I could hear her crying, and then my brother-in-law. My sister-in-law informed me that Debbie had attempted to take her own life and that they were rushing her to the hospital. I left the house in my pajamas, and Isabel and my daughters did not require further explanation. My side of the conversation painted a clear picture, and my daughters were deeply upset. Debbie had cut her wrists and would have passed if her brother had not needed to use the bathroom in the middle of the night when I arrived at the hospital. My in-laws were in a terrible state, and she had lost a significant amount of blood. She was undergoing surgery to repair her arteries. I should have called my kids, but my mind was preoccupied. I saw my son casually walking towards me, asking why I was at the hospital. I struggled to hold back tears as I explained what had happened. He immediately ran towards the operating room. I made the calls to the rest of my kids, but they were already aware. My youngest had informed them. The law was in a state of distress. She had lost a considerable quantity of blood and was undergoing surgery to repair her arteries. I should have called my children, but my mind was preoccupied. I then observed my son casually walking towards me, inquiring as to why I was at the hospital. The gravity of the situation became apparent, and I struggled to hold back tears as I explained what had transpired. He immediately proceeded to the operating room. I made the calls to the rest of my children, but they were already aware. My youngest had informed them, and they were on their way to the hospital. The surgery lasted 6 hours, and both my father, in light of the shortage of my son's blood type at the hospital, I and my husband donated our blood. My son was unable to participate in the operation, but he observed the surgery. My daughters were emotionally distressed, with my eldest daughter in particular dwelling on what could have been, what should have been, and what would have been. I encouraged her to focus on the present and not the past. My other 3 daughters were pacing anxiously when my son emerged from the operating room. He reassured us that she would be okay as I hugged him. He collapsed into my arms crying. I wanted to cry too, but I knew I had to stay strong for them. Late on Sunday, my mother-in-law, the final letters were discovered by the in-laws. Each of the children received one. I had a thick envelope with signed divorce papers and an 8-page apology letter. The letter emphasized that she had never been truly unhappy in our marriage. She admitted to succumbing to peer pressure and feeling brainwashed by her so-called friends. She called friends who made her believe she was just a servant. She expressed deep remorse for how she treated me, the kids, and for having the affair. This is the gist of it, in my own words. When Debbie woke up, she initially refused to talk and would just gaze out of the window. This went on like that for 2 days. Around that time, I asked about sharing updates because I needed a distraction. Gradually, she started acknowledging everyone, but there was a distance in her demeanor. It was as if she was disappointed to still be alive. However, she became more conversational as the days passed. Debbie's condition did not improve. She requested to speak with Isabel alone after their conversation. Isabel informed me that Debbie asked her if she loved me because she could see the love I have for her. Isabel confirmed that she does love me and revealed that I was the first man she had been with since her husband passed away 15 years ago in an eastern country. She asked me if Debbie's observation was correct if I loved her, and I acknowledged it. This made Debbie happy. Debbie will be in a mental hospital for observation. The doctor informed her parents that it could take a year, maybe. Even 2 years prior to her release, she may no longer be my wife or the woman I devoted all my love to. However, she remains the mother of our children, and I am committed to ensuring her recovery for the sake of our children. Second story. I am 24 years old and my girlfriend is 23. We have been together for 2 years. We actually met at a party hosted by a mutual acquaintance, and we immediately formed a strong connection. Our lives have been relatively positive, with financial stability and residence in the apartment that my father gifted to me upon graduation. It previously belonged to my grandfather, and since we already owned a house, it was simply my father passed the property on to me as it was previously owned by my grandfather. My girlfriend is very important to me as I do not have many close friends with whom I can confide. She is the one who is always there to support me emotionally. However, due to her work, she had to temporarily move to a different state for 2 months. We spoke on the phone every day, and I even planned a surprise for her, a whole-day date to make her happy when she returned. However, when I mentioned the surprise and how excited I was, her reaction was not what I expected. She declined and said she just wanted to be alone. Normally, she would never turn down surprises or anything like that. The subject never turns down surprises or anything like that. However, I understand that she might be tired, so I suggested we could reschedule the date for another day. She stopped replying to me, and I found this behavior quite strange, as it seemed like she was trying to distance herself from me. After a month, she suddenly suggested planning a vacation together. I will keep it brief, I agreed, and we made all the arrangements. We went to the destination she chose and we had a good time. However, during the vacation, she went alone to her friend's house. I had no idea her friend lived there, and she refused. After returning from our vacation, my girlfriend began to exhibit a distant and unresponsive behavior. 2 months later, I finally discovered the reason behind her actions. The incident occurred when I was in the bedroom while my girlfriend was in the shower. Her phone beeped, and I noticed a text message that caused me great distress. It read, "Hey beautiful, did he go to sleep?" I was shocked and confused, so I began reading their conversations. It turned out that she had been cheating on me with a man she met during her work trip. There was even a photo of them together. At our vacation destination, the couple in question were discussing their close relationship and how they managed to keep it a secret from me. I have reached a point where I am unsure of how to proceed with my life. The only person I trusted has betrayed me, and I am struggling to cope with this situation. It was the night I discovered she was cheating, but I have not yet confronted her about it. I am uncertain as to how I should proceed. Should I speak with her and request that she end her relationship with the other individual? Alternatively, should I attempt to reconcile the situation? If not, how should I proceed? I would appreciate any suggestions you may have for coping with this pain and moving on. It has been approximately 5 days since I shared the story about my girlfriend's infidelity. 6 days have elapsed since I shared the narrative of how my girlfriend of 2 years had been unfaithful to me and had manipulated me into going on a vacation where she could meet up with her affair partner. I was unable to cope with the emotional distress caused by this revelation, and so I left my home that night and informed her that I was going to. I spent the night at a friend's house, unable to sleep. I spent the time reading the comments people had posted, which suggested that I should leave her because she was using me. Some even mentioned seeking revenge, but I do not want revenge, despite everything she did to me. I still love her, and I am not angry. I am simply unable to explain my feelings. I went to my parents' house and talked to my mother. I know it might sound strange to talk to your mother about this, but I do not have anyone else to discuss it with. I usually would talk to my girlfriend about these issues. I informed my mother of the situation, who was initially shocked and devastated. She had believed that the girl in question would be an ideal partner for me and was looking forward to our future together. She reassured me that everything would be fine and that I should not worry. However, after further consideration, I decided to end the relationship permanently and treat myself to a vacation or similar. I returned to my house, but what I found was even more surprising. It did not take her a night to invite her partner over and cheat on me in my own home. Initially, I had no intention of seeking revenge. However, witnessing her in bed with another man gave me an excellent idea. I discreetly took their photographs while they were asleep, of course ensuring that they were covered. I am not the kind of person to invade someone's privacy in that way. Afterwards, I left to give myself some time before confronting her later that day. I anonymously called that man to meet at a cafe and also brought my girlfriend to the same cafe. You can only imagine the shock on her face. By the way, it is necessary to mention that I took screenshots of their conversations. This is now the time for step 2 of my plan. Step 2 involves gathering information about the man's background. It may not be entirely accurate, but I have a friend I met online who is knowledgeable about technology. He managed to obtain all the relevant details about the man. I discovered that he has a wife and 2 children. The story continues to become increasingly complex. I called the man's wife and explained everything, including my plan. She was upset by the news but was willing to confront him. Step 3 is now in motion. I had all the evidence necessary to bring about the downfall of both individuals. I anonymously sent the male party all the photographs in question, and he was visibly shaken. The 4th and final step in my plan was to break them up. I threatened to ruin his life if he did not leave my girlfriend. I recognize that my actions may be perceived as cruel, but he had committed much worse crimes against me. In fact, he had the audacity to break up with my girlfriend. I could hear her crying inside the bathroom, but she never shed a tear for me. Finally, I shared the evidence with our friends and family on social media. The next day, when she woke up, her bag was I informed her that she was to leave my residence immediately, or I would contact the police. She was visibly shocked and asked why. I proceeded to present her with the evidence, which she then requested to explain. I informed her that I would not tolerate any further delay and that she was to leave my house. I then sent a text message to the woman's husband, enclosing the divorce papers. Meanwhile, my girlfriend's phone was inundated with messages. I had previously informed her of my intention to legally terminate the relationship, but she left immediately after receiving those messages. Consequently, the situation was resolved amicably. The hearing will take some time, but the court will order the man to pay child support and compensate the woman for the emotional damage. I will also support the woman through this process. I am troubled by the thought of ruining a couple's life, but I believe the woman did not deserve the man she was with. She is a wonderful person, and even if the man broke up with my girlfriend because of me, he would have likely found someone else. I also feel remorse for the things I did in the heat of the moment to seek revenge. The woman has been receiving hate from her friends and family, which is saddening. However, this would not have happened if I had not taken matters into my own hands. One might argue that had she not extended an invitation to him on the night of my departure, the outcome might have been different. However, I believe I made the right decision in saving one person's life. I will do everything in my power to assist the lady and her young children. I am aware that anyone in my position would have likely taken a similar course of action. I would like to express my gratitude to you for your support and encouragement to leave this toxic relationship. It will take time for me to move on, but I am confident that I will be able to do so. I will keep you updated on the divorce proceedings and how the lady and I are doing in a week or two. Thank you.